All right. Hello, everybody. Can you all see the screen or should we move it? We'll fix the lights over here.
There. Now everyone see it?
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruta Cohen. I've been in Living Hasidus for like 7 years now, and I'm so happy to be presenting tonight. Okay, so tonight's topic is gut health, demystifying gut health, and kombucha. So a little bit about me. About like 6-ish, 7-ish years ago, maybe, yeah, about 6 years ago, I was experiencing certain health issues. And, I was very, very frustrated. I wasn't getting a lot of answers. And so I decided to see a nutritionist who specialized in helping women with their like women's health and gut health and things like that, focusing specifically on gut health with food, because I was so done with like all the other advice that I was getting that was not so helpful to me, that didn't sit right with me. So thank God I met this nutritionist and we worked together, and she introduced me to how to take care of my gut. So, okay, so tonight we're going to discuss, and I'll share a little bit more about gut health soon. But if you can see, tonight we are going to cover what is kombucha, the basics, the health benefits of kombucha, and what are probiotics, the ingredients and the tools, growing a SCOBY, fermenting the first time, fermenting the second time, and then we'll have space at the end for questions. So to continue my personal story about gut health, basically, I didn't even know what it was, but I learned that our gut, which is like our stomach, it's full of lots of different bacterias that can be helpful and bacterias that can be harmful. So when the gut has bacteria that are harmful, it can cause different health issues. It can cause a lot of bloating and discomfort and digestive issues. It can cause acne. It can cause a lot of different things that that are just uncomfortable. And it can also throw off our cycles, which was the problem that I had. I was having very irregular cycles. It was not a good situation. Cycles were very painful. I was having digestive issues. And so when I started to introduce more gut friendly foods into my diet, my gut slowly started to heal, and a lot of the symptoms that I was experiencing that were very painful and uncomfortable, they slowly went away. And Baruch Hashem, now I don't have like a perfectly like healed 100% gut, like it's a work in progress all the time, but my cycles are more regular now. They're not painful. Yeah, side note, cycles should not be painful. And if it's, even though it's technically normal, a lot of people experience painful cycles, they should not be painful. It means that there's something off going on, and it should be looked into, because us women, we go through a lot every month, and it should be pain-free as possible, and as least amount of bloating as possible. So what did I do? So what I said about the bacteria that could be harmful, what feeds that harmful bacteria? A lot of the things that feed that harmful bacteria are sugar, and different foods that can be very inflammatory, like highly processed foods. So I started eating a less processed food diet, so a lot more whole foods, like a lot of animal fats, a lot of eggs, a lot of protein, a lot of vegetables, a lot of rice. And I would spice things. Instead of buying a sauce from the store, I would use like spices and olive oil. And I would just make sure that the foods that I was eating were like, I could look at the package and be like, oh, I see that grew from the ground, or that came from this animal. And I would cook it myself in order to process it, for example. So that's something that just that's helpful for your gut microbiome. But something else that's really important for our gut microbiome is introducing or keeping alive the good bacteria that we have in there, because our gut needs to digest food, and also, there's a lot of things going on in there that need to make things go right, that affects everything in our body, including our cycles and our hormones and acne and the way that we feel, especially mental health. So the things that we were born, Hashem made us so that we are born with good bacteria in our gut that helps us to digest our food properly and helps our body run properly, especially when we go to the bathroom. That's very, very important for our bodies. We need those good bacteria to help us go number two every single day, once or twice a day. That's the best. And if you read the Rambam says going number two twice a day is actually the best. And that should be like, very regular. And if not, that means, there are things that should be worked on or introduced, or go see a practitioner to help you, see your health provider to help you figure that out for yourself. Okay, so good bacteria. Sometimes the balance can be off, especially if we're eating a lot of highly processed foods or a lot of sugar, or for other reasons like stress, anxiety. There's so many reasons. And to figure out if, let's say, you're experiencing symptoms, you need to go to your health provider to figure out what's going on with you specifically, to figure out how to fix that gut imbalance. So for people who have a lot more unhealthy bacteria, or maybe are missing a lot of the good bacteria, I was taught to introduce fermented foods to my diet. So what are fermented foods? Fermented foods are foods that sit in a it's actually healthy, like it basically food that sits for a little bit longer, that promotes the good bacteria to grow. So how do we know? I mean, these are foods that have been passed down from generation to generation, that our grandparents and great grandparents preserved their food this way, and they also ate it and they pass it down. This is how we know. For example, if someone starts to sell fermented melon, I would be a little bit skeptical. I've never heard of fermented melon. Maybe but if it comes out that like a certain culture has been fermenting melon for years and years, and generations upon generations have been eating it safely, then I would trust it. So I'll give you an example. Who here has heard of pickles? Yes, so pickles are a very, very common, very Jewish food that there are different kinds of pickles. There are pickles that are fermented with vinegar, that are not fermented, that are made out of vinegar. So those are the regular ones that you'll find shelf stable in the store on the shelf. Those are not fermented. Those do not have the good bacteria. They're delicious, but they're not the fermented food that you're looking for. There are also pickles that, what did they do back in the old days? And back in Russia, they were growing their produce in the summer. They were growing cucumbers, delicious in the summer. How do they have those cucumbers to last them through the fall, through the winter, all the way until the next summer when they can grow cucumbers again? They would preserve it through fermentation, and they would preserve it with salt, a lot of salt and water. And that created a great base for the fermentation to begin. And so they would preserve pickles, they would make sauerkraut, kimchi in more Asian cultures. There are lots of, if you look at different cultures all over the world, because before refrigeration, there are lots of different fermented foods that you can try. One of the foods is kombucha. And I really gravitated toward kombucha because I could just drink it while I was on the go, and I could drink it with whatever meal I was eating, and it's delicious. And I was buying bottles and bottles and bottles of kombucha. This is Brew Doctor. Right now, this is the only like good brand that I like that is sold in Crown Heights with a good hechsher. There used to be a brand called GT's, which was delicious, and the kashrus was good at that time that I was drinking it. But I've heard recently that the kashrus is in question. You should ask your Rav about the kashrus for your standards. There's also Health Aid kombucha, which again, the kashrus standards, it was brought to my attention, have seems like their hechsher is also questionable. Ask your Rav about your personal kashrut standards. But this Brew Doctor brand was really good. The thing is, these bottles of kombucha are pretty pricey in the store and pretty heavy to carry around from the grocery store to my house. And I was buying all these glass bottles of kombucha, and I saw like it was having a really great effect on my body. Like my hormones were balancing, my skin was getting clear, I wasn't getting so bloated, my periods weren't so painful anymore. And, I was going to the bathroom regularly, Baruch Hashem. And, I was like, there has to be a better way. So someone mentioned to me that they were make kombucha at some point. I said, make kombucha? How do you make it? And when I learned how to make it, it became the simplest, easiest thing to do. And it's my favorite way to introduce healthy probiotics into my life because the process is really simple and easy to me. And it's just easy. You drink it, it's delicious, it's fizzy, it's bubbly, it's yum. Okay, so what is kombucha? Kombucha is a fermented tea drink that can be made with a base of green, black, or white tea. Kombucha is full of probiotics and can be a deliciously refreshing, healthy, and bubbly alternative to soda. So, yeah, I love it. And note here that I write green, black, or white tea. These are teas that are technically like very plain in flavor, and they also have caffeine, which we'll see later is an important part of the kombucha brewing process. So here we are. What are the benefits of introducing probiotics to your diet? The benefits of fermented foods start in your digestive system in your gut. The gut is called your second brain because of its powerful influence on many aspects of your health, from mood and behavior to appetite and weight. It even affects your immune system. Feeding it with fermented foods helps give you a better mix of the bacteria known as the gut biome. That boosts gut health and in turn, all the body functions that your gut supports. So it helps with your immune system. So whenever I feel like I'm getting a little sick, in addition to all the different vitamins and herbs that I take, when I feel that little tickle in the back of my throat, I make sure to up my probiotic intake, including kombucha, sauerkraut, fermented pickles, and all of that. I try to get as much good, healthy bacteria in my body as I can so that I can fight off whatever I feel coming my way. Some of the bacteria in fermented foods can jumpstart the chemical serotonin, which boosts feelings of well-being. That's because the gut and the brain have a very strong connection. So much so that improving your gut microbiome can improve the central nervous system. It might also help ease anxiety or depression and boost cognitive function, your ability to think, remember, and learn. So it's been discovered that there is a huge connection between your brain and your gut. And when you have a good, healthy gut, then you can think clearer, you have a better mental health, and things are more in balance. Your immune system relies on gut health to function properly. Gut imbalances can throw it off. Feed your gut the healthy bacteria and fermented foods, and you can strengthen your immune response. That's your body's ability to fend off diseases. Fermented foods can help fight inflammation and help manage conditions like IBS and inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. Having a healthy biome can help prevent or manage obesity, high blood pressure, and heart disease. And the good bacteria can feed the biome inside of your mouth and lead to better oral health. That can mean less dental plaque and tartar buildup, and it can also help stop cavities and even gum disease.
That was a delicious drink.
Yes. All right. So, how do you brew kombucha, this delicious drink? So, these are the things that you're going to need. A large glass jar. This is the jar that I use to make one batch of kombucha, which is about 1.5 bottles, flip top bottles. So, one jar. Filtered water, organic caffeinated tea, a pot for boiling the water, organic cane sugar, paper towel, or a cloth and rubber bands to cover the top of your jar. You're going to need a funnel, and you're going to need a glass flip top bottle. We try to use glass when we're fermenting and not plastic, because the plastic can leach into whatever you're fermenting, and that's not exactly what we want to promote a healthy gut. And then last but not least, SCOBY and starter tea. So we're going to learn about all of those. But these are the parts of kombucha. You have your SCOBY, which I don't know if you guys can see, but at the top of my jar, there is this like disc that it's like a little fuzzy. I don't know how to describe. It's a little gloppy. Sure, walk around with it. Um, yeah, little jellyfish. And you also see that there's some sediment at the bottom. That sediment is also part of the healthy bacteria that are in this kombucha. So it could also be called the mother. Yeah. So okay, so what is a SCOBY? What is a SCOBY? So you see, it's a little weird looking thing. That's like a little like a jellyfish. It's a little gloppy. It is, SCOBY stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. And it's specific bacteria and yeast that is good for your gut microbiome. It is not the mold, the disgusting, bad for you mold that grows in the shower or on a piece of bread. This is the good for you, and people have been drinking this for years and years and years, so we know that this is good for us, and we see the effects of it on our bodies. So how does it form? What happens is when you take tea and sugar, caffeinated tea and sugar, in a sanitized jar, and you let it sit for long enough, it's going to grow one of these. I did not do that from scratch. I went to the store and I bought a bottle of plain unflavored kombucha, and I let it sit in the jar for about a week or two, and it grew a SCOBY naturally because that's what was living in there. Yes, it's alive. It's alive, everybody. It's alive. Okay, so this is step 0, growing a SCOBY. If you can't get SCOBY or starter tea from a friend, you can, this is how you grow your own. You could purchase a bottle of plain unflavored kombucha from the store. Make sure it doesn't have any extra sweeteners or flavorings. There are some brands that, if you look at the bottle, they do the fermentation process, but at the end of it, they add extra sugar or Splenda or other kinds of flavorings or sweeteners that when you're trying to grow a SCOBY, you don't want that in your original mix, because this, you're going to be having the mother. You need mother. You need a solid foundation in order to make kombucha. You need to boil some water with some tea and sugar. And when that is combined, when it's cooled, you can combine it with your store-bought kombucha in the jar. You could cover it with a paper towel or a cloth and a rubber band. Then you wait 10 days.
Why do you cover it?
Oh, let me explain. That's a good question. Why do I cover the kombucha not with a lid, but with a paper towel? The reason is because there are living organisms in here and you want them to be alive when you drink it. So they need air to breathe. And as they multiply and eat the sugar and eat the caffeine, they will release gases, but they need air to breathe. So you want the air to be able to get inside your kombucha. So a paper towel, it has holes, it can breathe. And that's why you cover it. But you don't want like bugs or things to like get in. You don't want to just leave it open for anything to get in, because if things get in, it's going to go bad. And you also want to make sure it's sanitized, because you only want your kombucha to grow in here, not anything else. You could. Yeah.
So with the base kombucha, you like some kombucha,
Oh,
that as like a big kombucha instead of going like a slow down.
that's a good question. I'm not familiar with that tea, so I don't know. I can't answer you. Someone for the Zoom, someone asked that they buy the Yogi Kombucha green tea. I wonder if that they're selling like dehydrated SCOBY, like for the probiotics from kombucha in there. That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I guess if you start making kombucha and then you experiment with that, you can let us know how it works. It's fine. Listen, when you start making kombucha and you start figuring out how to experiment, figure out a lot of cool things that you didn't know before.
Really fun.
It's very fun. All right, next. So this is what a SCOBY looks like. And it will look brown, it will look white. The brand new one, every time you brew another batch of kombucha, another SCOBY will grow on top. So Baruch Hashem, I have available to sell or give away. You're always going to be growing more and more and more SCOBY discs on top of each other because it grows. All right. So the first ferment, there are 2 fermentation stages in kombucha. The first ferment looks like this in the jar. So when you have your starter tea, you'll have about 2 cups, like about this much, plus your SCOBY, right? You'll have a little bit of liquid and your SCOBY. And if you want to make a full batch like this, then you just boil some water, filtered water, organic sugar, and tea. So you want to make sure that your tea is unflavored. It's the basic caffeinated green tea, black tea, or white tea. And you boil it with the sugar. As soon as it boils, turn off the water so that it doesn't overboil and all the water boils out. You want the liquid to add to your jar. You don't want to make sure that it flies away, evaporates away, but you want to boil it to make sure that there's no impurities in the water, and you want to make sure that it's sanitary. Again, we don't want anything that we don't want the bad stuff to grow in our kombucha. We want the good stuff.
Keep us organic so you don't have
Pesticides, yes. It's best to use organic tea and organic sugar so that you don't have pesticides in your kombucha. Now, at this point, so this is already this is about 12 days old now, actually, but 7 to 10 days around based on the temperature of your kitchen, based on, the weather, based on your taste, based on your schedule. You can taste it at any point, 7 to 12, whatever days after, and you'll taste it. It'll taste a little sour. That's a good question. Do you leave it out or do you put it in the fridge? You leave it out on your counter to sit there in your kitchen. You don't want to put it in front of a window, in front of the sun, because the sun will make it go very, very fast and will go sour very fast. You want it regular room temperature. You want it in a nice place out of the way in your kitchen, like when you're baking challah. You don't want the flour flying everywhere and the yeast from the challah going into your kombucha. You don't want to leave your kombucha near the trash where people are throwing out gross moldy stuff. Like you don't want to keep it in a place that it might get contaminated with other things, even though it is covered. You don't want, let's say you have someone coming to your apartment to fix the roof, and there's access to the roof right above the place where you keep your kombucha. You don't want the person who's going to open that and all the dust from your roof to fall down. Speaking from experience. So you don't want that going. When the landlord texts me, I'm coming to fix this, quickly hide the kombucha in my room. But yeah, you basically want to keep it in a place that's not too hot, not too cold, but like away from other things. Yeah, you leave it out, and then when you feel like you want to taste it to see if it's to your taste, if you like things a little sweeter, if you like things a little sour, if you like things a little sweeter, maybe taste it earlier and move it to the second fermentation stage earlier. If you like it a little more sour, then wait a little bit longer and wait for the second fermentation stage longer.
That way the bacteria eat up
That because what happens when you are fermenting kombucha, the bacteria in the kombucha eat. So when you're boiling your tea and your sugar, you're making a very sweet tea. Um, it's very sweet in the beginning, but as the days go on, the SCOBY eats the sugar and eats the caffeine in the tea, and it produces a gas. It makes bubbles. Yeah, so that's what it does. So it turns it into a kombucha drink. That's what happens. So you have the probiotics, but you don't necessarily have the sugar, the very, very sweet tea that you make in the beginning. That's not the product that you have in the end. You have a more sour based drink that is bubbly and fizzy. That's where the fizz comes from. And if you wanted, you could stop right here at this point and drink. You could pour it into a cup. You could drink it. You could taste it and just keep it like that. If you want it, if you like the way it tastes now, put a plastic lid on it, not the metal ones. Put a plastic lid on it, put it in the fridge, and you're good to go. Just drink it. When you put something fermented in the fridge, it slows down the fermentation process because it's colder than room temperature. The SCOBY likes to be room temperature, likes to be warm. So when you put it in the fridge, it kind of slows down that fermentation. So this is the first fermentation step. And here are some pictures of the process. We have the sugar, the filtered water, the tea. I boil it. And then when it's done, I add it to my starter and I have it in the jar. I already explained, you could just have plain kombucha after 10 days and you're good to go. So let's add some bubbles. This is second ferment. So this is a nice flip top bottle. It's designed like this. Air cannot escape. And it has a thin neck so that everything, all the gases can stay inside. Yeah, so this is where you flavor it. This is where you add all these delicious flavors. So you can get creative with whatever herbs, whatever fruits. You can even use frozen fruit. That's like, I'm going to admit, this is frozen mango. I just took the mango out of the bag and I let it defrost in a little bowl. And then when it was slightly defrosted, I chopped it up small so that it could fit in the narrow neck of the bottle. And yeah, so I used that. You could use blueberries, you could use strawberries and mint, lemon, ginger. You can be creative. Strawberry basil, as Michal says, is delicious. So this is where you can really get creative. Remember, when you have your empty jar, to make sure to sanitize it. What does sanitizing mean? You want to make sure that whatever is in here between uses, whatever is in the bottle, or when you just buy it, to make sure that there's really nothing of living in there that you don't want. So what I do is I put some soap and I run my sink on very, very, very the hottest setting, the kind that like you burn your finger when you put in, and I run it in over the bottle, let it run over, pour it out, make sure all the soap is out, rinse it again in the boiling hot water, rinse it again, rinse it a few times in boiling hot water. If I had a big enough pot, I would do what they used to do in Russia and boil a giant pot of water, put a towel at the bottom and stick it in and boil the jars. But I do not have a pot this giant. So that's what I have to do. And yeah, that's how I sanitize my bottles. And basically, when you are pouring out I basically take a funnel and, oh, you're going to hear the sound. That's how you know this is alive. It made a nice pop. So I take a funnel, I put in the top. After I've already added my fruit, then I pour in my kombucha. Try not to get the SCOBY to fall in. You want to save that for your next round. And at the same time, so once I've flavored this, Then I boil my next round. I leave some at the bottom, leave this much. So I pour all of it, but leave this much and leave my scobies in here. And then I'm ready to boil more tea, more sugar with water, and just make another batch. Yeah, yeah.
So she can make more with that.
So I leave my SCOBY every batch. I leave it in this jar. Another one grows on top of it. You have extra scobies, extra, 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 and you'll notice they'll start taking up space in your jar. You're gonna be like, okay, do I have any friends who want to make kombucha?
It also ferments it much quicker.
It does ferment it much quicker. So like when you have the more scobies you have in here, like the quicker it goes. You're like, oh my gosh, I have to make kombucha again. It's already sour. So you want to make sure. But if you're overwhelmed with all the scobies, you can like peel some off. Don't be afraid to touch it. You can use gloves. You can wash your hands with soap and really, really hot water and touch the SCOBY. It's okay. You can touch it. It's not going to hurt you. You can rip it. It's okay. You're not going to break it if you rip it. It likes to grow in the shape of the jar that it's in, a perfect nice circle. But then you'll see very quickly it'll turn all gloppy and goopy and stringy. And that's totally fine. And that's good. But that's pretty much what you do. So you have your fruit and you have your kombucha from the jar in here. What do you do now? You can't just drink it right. I mean, you could just drink it right away. It might not taste like the fruit that you put in. You have to wait a little bit. And you also, if you like fizz, you might want it to get a little fizzier. So what you do is you leave it out on your counter again, next to this nicely brewing next batch. You leave them brewing side by side. You keep this one closed. This one is open. The jar of fermenting kombucha is open with the paper towel. This one is closed because you want to make sure that you get all those bubbles if you like bubbles. And it just makes a nice environment for the SCOBY, for the bacteria that is in here to eat the sugar of the fruit, because this is sour. What you fermented in the giant jar has become sour now, and it's hungry. It likes sugar. If you put something sweet like a fruit, it's going to eat the sugar in the fruit and make the fruit less sweet. So after you fermented it, you're going to taste the fruit inside and you're going to be like, this does not taste like mango anymore. It does not taste sweet anymore, but the actual kombucha in the bottle will taste sweet. You could put any fruit you want. You could put orange. I would say apple didn't work out so well, but like pomegranate, maybe you should juice it first. Different things. As you experiment, you figure out what works, what doesn't work. The reason pomegranate didn't work so well is because the shell of the pomegranate is the pomegranate seeds are very hard, so it didn't go absorb into the kombucha as well. So I would suggest juicing the pomegranate first and putting pomegranate juice. So if you leave it long enough, a new one will. But because it's closed and you want to drink it right away, you don't give it enough time to grow another SCOBY. So once it's out on your table for about a day or two, and if you fill it up to the top, there's something very, very, very important. Do this once a day or twice a day. Do you hear that pop? That is the trapped bubbles that if you don't do that, it might explode. You don't really want to. It has happened. You do not want kombucha on your ceiling, I promise.
I have pineapple on my
So make sure just remember, the longer you leave it out, the more bubbly it gets, but the more sour it gets. So you want to experiment what works best in your apartment based on the season. So for me, I find the sweet spot is about 1.5 days to just leave it out in the winter. 1.5 days in the winter. You leave it out with the fruit. This with the fruit, I made it yesterday afternoon. So right now is about perfect time to drink it.
How long does it last?
So first, Not very long because I drink it.
But then, like, how long do you leave it?
So you leave it out for about a day or two, maybe 3 days, and you then you put it in the fridge. Remember, refrigeration, cold slows down the fermentation process. So when you feel like it's a good sweet spot for the taste that you like, and you see that the kombucha turned the color of your fruit, and you're so excited and you're ready to drink it, pop it in the fridge for like in a good hour or two. It's going to be cold, it's going to be refreshing. And also, another pro tip, if you're afraid that your kombucha is going to explode on you because you know that you left it out a little too long, just put it in the fridge for like a day and then open it carefully. Because again, when you put it in the fridge, it slows down the fermentation process. So then you just pour it into a cup and enjoy. So like once a day, but you're only leaving it out for about 1 to maybe 3 days, then put it in the fridge. Otherwise, it's going to be too sour because the bacteria is just going to eat up all the sugar. And you want it to taste like mango. You don't want it to taste like sour mango. You know? Once it's in the fridge, do you have to open it once a day? I will be opening it once a day or more than once a day because I will be drinking it. But in the case that you forget it in the fridge, you don't have to. Also, if you're going away, if you know that you wanted to brew some kombucha and it's Pesach and you're going home for Pesach and you don't know what to do with it, put it in the fridge, especially like if no one in your apartment's using the fridge over Pesach. I mean, it's Pesach that technically I get it's not chametz, but if you're able to leave it in a fridge over Pesach, just you don't want to. So the question was, do you want to put it in a bag over Pesach, but you want to leave it on your counter? I wouldn't.
Like I'm in the fridge in a bag.
In a fridge in a bag. I wouldn't suggest it because it still would need some air, and you don't want it to die.
So you could boil. You could set it into a jar and put it in the jar.
Right. I guess. I mean. No, you're not going to drink it on Pesach. I wouldn't drink it on Pesach.
You don't want
Oh,
container.
right. If you don't want the chametz container on your.
I'll tell you what I do.
What do you do, Michal? Because Michal, you use your kitchen year round.
Year round, and I use it for Pesach a lot.
Yeah.
I put it in a safe place in my chametz closet with all the rest of my things. And that way, it has the temperature. Like I make it right before I switch my kitchen over. It has plenty of time to whatever, and I leave it covered so that the air can go through, and then it ends up being a little over a week, which is essentially what I do regularly. It's
spoiled. The point is that it is spoiled. It just gets more sour and sour. Oh, so this is a good question. Let me repeat what you said and let me answer your question. Okay, so the first thing that Michal said was that what she does, because she uses her kitchen year round, especially on Pesach. So what she does is that before she switches over her kitchen, she makes an extra strong batch with a little extra tea, a little extra sugar to make it a little more strong, to make sure the SCOBY has the food it needs over Pesach. She covers it with a rubber band and a paper towel or a cloth, and she leaves it in a chametz cabinet. That way it gets some kind of airflow, like under the door, it still can breathe, but it's away for Pesach. And then when it comes out after Pesach, it's also about the time that she anyways waits to between batches. So, and it's good to go. She has fresh kombucha right after Pesach, which is great after all that matzah. It's definitely helpful. And then Chaya's question was, does it go bad? So the nature of fermentation is that the bacteria that grows, that's the natural like going bad that happens. It's the breakdown the breakdown of what's there and the growth of bacteria and yeasts. Baruch Hashem, this is beneficial to us. But the more you leave it out, the more sour it gets. So it actually is very. So I'm actually want to explain this because it's a very interesting point. that people are afraid, oh no, what if like mold grows on my kombucha? If your kombucha has a good ratio of starter, that's why you need that little bit of the starter tea at the bottom that you leave over every time you make kombucha. If you have a good ratio of that starter and then the new tea, sweet tea that you add, if you have a good ratio, your kombucha will not grow mold because it's too sour of an environment for mold. Mold will not want to grow there because it's not a home that mold will want to grow. Mold does not like this environment. So I've actually had a different issue. When I first started brewing kombucha, I had this issue called kami yeast, but it's a specific kind of yeast that is attracted to growing in the kombucha if the kombucha is too sweet. So, in addition to that, that could also attract mold to grow. So, in the beginning, I was starting out. I didn't really know how to brew kombucha, and I was still figuring things out. And I left a little bit too little of the starter tea at the bottom, and too much sugar and tea. I didn't leave enough over at the bottom, and it made that there was too much sugar and other yeasts wanted to grow. And the SCOBY looked different. Also, the SCOBY looked fuzzy. The SCOBY looked bubbly in a different way. It was not a good look. Like you can tell when it goes bad, it goes bad. And I had to throw it out and start over. And it happens sometimes. Here is a video just a short video that shows the process.
First, you're going to need some organic cane sugar and organic tea. Boil it with some water and let it cool. Once it's cool, add it to your SCOBY and already made kombucha. Let it sit for 10 days. Then it's time to chop your strawberries and mint. Add it to your bottle. Pour some 10-day-old kombucha, cover it, let it sit for 2 to 3 days, and enjoy.
Okay.
One more time.
Make some kombucha with me. First, you're going to need some organic cane sugar and organic tea. Boil it with some water and let it cool. Once it's cool, add it to your SCOBY and already made kombucha. Let it sit for 10 days. Then it's time to chop your strawberries and mint. Add it to your bottle. Pour some 10-day-old kombucha, cover it, let it sit for 2 to 3 days, and enjoy.
Ew, that's a nice video. Wow. I see the strawberry mint.
Ew. All right. And questions, I guess. If anyone has any questions. Of course. Now is a taste party. Yeah. That's a good question. So I follow a recipe of about for every cup. There's a ratio that I found online that I also found works best for me. I'm happy to share my recipe. It was in the slide here. So for about 2 cups of starter for a jar like this, so to make 1 jar, I use about 2 cups of starter plus the SCOBY, about 4 to 5 cups of filtered water. And then for each cup of water, I do 1 tea bag, and half a tablespoon of sugar. So basically, but you could also add more. You could do more sugar and more tea. You could see if you like it stronger. So now I've been making it stronger, but my base is 5 cups of water, 5 bags of tea, 2.5 tablespoons of sugar. It's okay. You could take a picture of this if you want, or
Have more questions.
yes, more questions.
I'm not. Make my number. I can share the recipe. I'm not really sure what you're talking about because I don't know. I think I used.
Yeah, so that was the beginning of the class where the SCOBY and the starter is your base that you start from. So you can get from a friend.
Yes, the easiest
Here.
way is to get from a friend.
You get.
A SCOBY.
You could make it yourself. It just takes a while. You could buy a bottle of plain unflavored kombucha from the store, leave it out, and add some tea and some sugar to it so that it will have some food. And then I did, and it was a long process. Like it took a while. Yes. It's like 2 or 3 weeks, depending. But like you start out with a little bit, and once you get your SCOBY, then you have to make more. Like it's about a month until you can actually drink kombucha if you make your SCOBY from start. So if you get starter from a friend, I also sell starter. If you get starter, then you can, depending on where they are in their kombucha brewing in the part of the week, you can add tea to it right away and get fresh kombucha to drink in about a week to 10 days. Yeah. So I have some here to taste. I also sell from my apartment. I live here in Crown Heights, and you're welcome to get my number, and you're welcome to contact me, and I'm happy to sell you kombucha from whatever flavor I'm making that week. You're also welcome to taste. I have some store-bought just so that you could taste the difference. And then my homemade, you're all welcome. I have some shot glasses here if you want to taste it. But yeah, that's a good question. Another question that I get asked a lot is how much can I drink? If you've never drank kombucha before, best to like maybe drink a cup a day or something. But if you're used to it, drink as much as you want. But I have these little taster cups so that you could just. That is a good question. The ones that they sell in the store, they know because they test it, and also some brands cheat a little bit. But I don't have a way to test mine. I would love to. I would love to test it. It would be really cool to look at it under a microscope. That would be really fun. Yeah.
I'll say that when I first started, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so complicated.
I'm talking to Mike.
Ratios and sugar and blah. And it honestly became such a part of our lives. Like my kids look forward to it. This is like for them, this is like the biggest treat. Like
yeah.
Kids friendly.
Yeah, kids love it. Kids love it. Thank you. I'm so glad you're all enjoying. All the people on Zoom, you're missing out. But yeah, no, I also like, people say to me like, oh, brewing kombucha is so complicated. I'm like, there are people who make sourdough. That is way more complicated. This is like a once a week thing for me, like a once a day in that one day of the week. It does not take a lot out of my day to make it.
For me, what I do is that anyway, I'm Arab Shabbos, I'm in the kitchen doing a bunch of different projects. So I just boil the tea and boil the sugar, and like for me, it's just like a weekly thing, and then we have kombucha for that week. So yeah, we really enjoy it.
Another question that people ask me is like, how do you remember? So Michal said like this reminded me of the question that people ask me. How do you know when to make your next batch? So Michal has her Friday day, so she's on a 7-day cycle. Her recipe works for 7 days, and she knows that every Friday she's in the kitchen. She's anyways there. She just kombucha's another one of her Friday prepare for Shabbos things. For me, I like to know how many days it's been out because it's not always 7 days. It doesn't always work with my schedule every 7 days. So yeah, it looks a little rough, but I put a little masking tape. Basically, it's good to label, your kombucha so that you know when you made it, because I always forget. Another thing you could do is like put a reminder on your phone, and so then you'll remember what day. And once you figure it out, and once you see like the temperature of your kitchen, like whether it's in the summer or the winter, you'll know like, oh, your kombucha recipe is a 10-day kombucha recipe in the summer, or no, in the winter, and in the summer it's like a 6-7 day recipe. You'll you'll figure it out. It takes some adjusting, but once you get the hang of it, it's very quick, very easy. Once every 10 days. Yeah.
It's really fun to pair out with different flavors. Like
Yeah.
pineapple. It's just
Yeah. And I love like mixing fruits, mixing herbs and fruits, different, flavor combinations. It's fun. Yeah. So yeah, enjoying good health.
amazing.
Yay. Let me stop
Do
sharing.
you sell?
I do. I do sell kombucha. You're all welcome to get my number after the class, and I'm welcome to share my kombucha with everyone. Oh, I knew you would. I knew you would. If anyone else wants, I have like Ziplocs. If you guys want a SCOBY, I have some Ziplocs so you could transport it. But the thing with the Ziploc is you have to have a jar at home ready to put it in when you get home because it needs to breathe. So
Can I cover with the drink away?
yeah, you can cover it. You can cover it. Oh, something else that I remember that's important to mention. Try to obviously like to touch metal here and there is fine for your kombucha to touch metal, but if you're covering your kombucha with metal or touching it with metal for a long time, more than a day, or plastic, well, yes, plastic, but plastic could be more long term, but metal specifically actually could mess with the balance of the bacteria and yeast in your kombucha, and you don't want to mess with that. So just don't. If you need to cover it briefly, don't cover it with the regular mason jar metal cover that it comes with.
So like
Yeah.
one of those plastic ones.
Yeah. Oh, so to bring the kombucha here tonight, I covered my kombucha with this, and actually this thing, it helps. It's good for lots of other fermentation projects. You could put a thing on top to help the fermentation, but this actually popped open quite a few times because it was bumping around on the way here. So that's how you know it's good active cultures. Nice and alive. Keeping us alive. All right.
Okay, so part of living cities,
Should
we
I
have two traditions.
stop the recording?
It's a selfie with our speaker.
Yeah.
Ruta, do you mind if we take a selfie with you?
Of course, I don't mind. Let me take this off.
Hey, Ruta.
And the Zoom?
So,
And
just the recording for now because her mom wants to say, I love you, Ruta.